The rain pounding the narrow streets of the town made the darkness of the night even more gloomy. The air was cold, the wind howling ominously. Thomas squinted behind the steering wheel, trying to see the road ahead. Even with his windshield wipers running at full speed, the thick fog and rain that surrounded the world ahead of him blurred his vision. As his eyes were fixed on the road, a giant pumpkin suddenly appeared in front of him. He slammed on the brakes, but the muddy road caused his car to skid to the side of the road. His heart was pounding as he tried to catch his breath. He stared in surprise. The pumpkin was right there. But how could it be? It was so big, so different from an ordinary pumpkin. In the light of the headlights, he noticed strange holes on the pumpkin. At first he didn't understand, but when he looked carefully, he saw that the hole looked like human eyes. At that moment, a muffled whisper echoed inside the car. "Run. Away." Thomas pulled back, startled. The whisper echoed in his ears, but he was alone inside. He was covered in sweat. When his eyes returned to the pumpkin, he noticed a pair of eyes staring back at him from those dark holes. The pumpkin's skin trembled slightly. A muffled groan was heard from inside. At that moment, Thomas's blood ran cold. The rain had increased in speed, and the sky had descended over the town like a dark nightmare. Thomas was trembling as he got out of his car, his eyes wide open. He was stuck between fear and curiosity. He didn't even know what logic he was acting on, but he had to get away from that pumpkin. A little further on, he saw an abandoned farmhouse. A dim light was filtering through its windows. Yet no one had lived in this part of town for years. When he reached the door, walking on the muddy ground, he noticed that the old boards were swollen with moisture. When he pushed the door with his hand, it creaked open. A strong, musty smell filled his lungs as he stepped inside. He could hear the wooden floor groaning subtly with each step. An old diary covered in dust was sitting on a large dining table in the middle. When he nervously opened the cover, he read the following words written in shaky handwriting. "That pumpkin is cursed. The moment you see its eyes, it's too late to escape." At that very moment, a door creaked inside the farm. Thomas froze. The hairs on the back of Thomas's neck stood on end. The inside of the farmhouse was larger and gloomier than it appeared from the outside. The rain was pounding against the windows as if it would break, and the occasional thunderclap shook the interior of the wooden house. The rustling sounds coming from inside caused him to slow down his steps. When he turned around, he saw a pumpkin standing in front of the door. But this time, the pumpkin had changed. Its shell had cracked and a thick black liquid was seeping from inside. At that moment, the pages of the diary began to turn by themselves. When Thomas looked at a page with trembling hands, a new sentence appeared. "It has come. There is no turning back now." When he looked out the window, he saw shadows approaching through the rain. Their faces were indistinct, but their movements were not human. They were moving slowly and irregularly towards the farmhouse. Thomas ran to the door, but the door suddenly closed of its own accord. He was trapped inside. He pulled the door handle with all his might, but it wouldn't open. A whisper behind him made him feel an icy coldness on the back of his neck. When he turned, he saw a long, twisted hand emerging from the inside of the pumpkin, reaching out toward him. He screamed and pulled back, but his back hit the wall. The pumpkin had grown even larger now, and the eyes inside it followed Thomas. The hums coming from the farm walls had become human screams. For a moment, he noticed the rusty scythe hanging on the wall behind him. He grabbed it with a shudder and did the only thing he could. He swung at the pumpkin monster with all his might. A deafening scream rang out as the scythe hit the shell. The pumpkin screamed, thick black smoke rising from it. Thomas stumbled back. The whispers grew louder. "We are its victims, too." Thomas saw slumped, rotting bodies in the corner of the room. They stared at him with empty eyes. Their faces were familiar, the people whose names had been written in the journal. But now they were just part of the nightmare. Thomas closed his eyes and wished for it all to end. He felt free in an instant. He broke free from the shadow of the pumpkin and quickly ran outside. The rain was pouring down, but he had to get away. Just as he reached his car, he noticed something. There were pumpkin motifs all over his car, and in the back seat, there was a face waiting for him. Thomas ran from the car, screaming. He was running through the forest, not knowing where he was going. But he knew there was no escape. Finally, he fell to the ground. A pumpkin appeared in front of him, in the rain. But this one was bigger than the others. The eyes inside it were burning. And that was when Thomas understood. The last thing he heard as he disappeared into the rain was his own scream.